So hello everybody, I'm Julie Tamler and I'm from Inclusion Center. Inclusion Center is a drop-in activity center by and for people with disabilities, people with medical issues, and everybody else who's interested in coming and joining us. Would anybody like to say anything else about Inclusion Center?
Inclusion Center is a fun way to get to know people. It's a good place to come to when you want to get away from certain things. You come, you chat with people, you can forget about things in your life for a little bit, or you can talk about things in your life with people in case because people are very understanding here, they might have some advice for you in order to help you with what's going on in your life. It's also a great place to have a lot of fun. I mean, we do a lot of games, a lot of art. It's just an awesome place to be.
It's great. Anybody else?
My name is Priscilla Parrott. I feel that the Inclusion Center is a great place for everyone to learn new things and to be educated about developmental disabilities.
Would you like to add anything?
Sure.
Hi, my name is Grace. I came to Inclusion Center in 2014 after I had a stroke, and it was a life-saving experience for me. The people that I met here at Inclusion Center and the people that I continue to meet at Inclusion Center have made my life so wonderful. I can't even describe it. So many things have happened here, things that I've learned, experiences that I've had, and the way that it makes me feel after we have a session at an Inclusion Center. What happened with me is I was a regular person working every day and doing my normal thing, and I had the stroke, and all of a sudden I lost my house, I lost my job, I lost everything that I thought was my life was about. And after that happened, you feel like you fell off a mountain or something, and all of a sudden you're a disabled person and you don't really know what to do with that, and you feel kind of like you've lost everything. And so when I came to Inclusion Center, it was like I've gotten more back than I ever lost that I had before, because it's really about people. We help each other, we help the outside community, we educate each other, we educate the community, and we allow each other to have our feelings, and we're respectful. And the level of respect here is beyond anything I've ever seen in my many experiences in my life. Wherever you go, you talk to people or whatever, you work with them, and you don't see people understanding what someone else's struggle is. But the main thing that I've learned here is that everybody has a struggle no matter what their situation is. And if we're here for each other and we're willing to give each other a hand up, it makes your life so much better than it was before. That's it.
So Inclusion Center started about 5 years ago. And what we noticed at that point was that there are a lot of different groups in town that deal with disability and medical issues, but they don't work together. And so if you have a developmental disability, then you belong over here, but you don't end up doing the activities that this group is doing or that. So we decided that we would have one center and be inclusive and include everybody with every disability, every difference, every medical issue, and everybody else, everybody who is interested in coming. So we do all sorts of stuff here. This person over here, can I use your name?
Yes.
Alana is our champ when it comes to games and activities. And then we have presentations every week with people in the community who come in and teach us, and they learn from us also. So if somebody comes to talk about
Nutrition.
Or fire safety.
they end up learning about our issues, and they go home and go back to their work, better for it.
Yeah. Like when the fire department came and was talking to us about fire safety, they learned some things about, trying to figure out in certain situations how to get people in wheelchairs out the door without them injuring themselves even further. Because the fire could be, for example, in the only wheelchair accessible way. Then you have to figure out, okay, how is this person in a wheelchair gonna get out of the building if the only way out for the wheelchair is in flames? So it helps, no matter if the presentations come to teach us about something, they learn something in return of how to better be more efficient with their own stuff, because they're learning about people with disabilities where they probably weren't thinking about that before. And now it's like in the forefront of their mind when they are trying to teach people about fire safety in the future, or teach them about nutrition or diabetes or things like that.
So at Inclusion Center, we have a lot of fun. Today, we learned how to dance to Dame to Cosita, I think.
I don't know
Dame
what it's
to
called.
Dame tu cosita.
And so that was really fun. So we do serious things and we do very silly things, and it's all fun and excellent. Let's see, would you like to introduce your story about your disability and
Well, I think Grace
teach a
did
little
that.
bit?
I did a little bit
You-
about that.
you're-
But
Okay.
if I can, I'd like to talk about how Inclusion Center has allowed me to be more engaged with the communities. One of the first things that I got an opportunity to do was to work with the Americans with Disabilities Council in Brattleboro. I know Julie is still part of that, and meeting other people and meeting the selectmen and meeting the other people on the town board and introducing them personally to the struggles of people with disabilities. So being active in the community is another part of what we learn here at Inclusion Center. And the other thing that I've become involved with and that I'm really engaged with is Vermont Workers Center, working on the Healthcare is a Human Right campaign this year and the Poor People's March later on this summer, and being engaged in that kind of work and letting people know how important it is to all of us that we're engaged with the government and not just standing by and saying, oh, we just lost that, something's not going to happen because nobody said anything. But we found that over time that if people are more engaged with their own issues and can speak for themselves, that it empowers them. And they don't know how much they could possibly get done if they never take that opportunity. And for like my whole life, I've always been interested in politics. You guys will attest to that. But I've never really had the time or the ability to be actually active and go out and work on a campaign like I am now because of my disability. But the passion to do that really comes from the people that I've met here and the conversations that we have right here at Inclusion Center. So whatever I do, I have them to thank for it, because otherwise I wouldn't have known anything about Workers Center if I hadn't come to Inclusion Center. And now I consider that like a huge part of my life, and it makes me feel really good about myself as a human being and as a citizen and as somebody who is not going to stand by and let everything fall apart while I'm resting on my laurels or whatever. I will never be sitting back again after this experience.
Well, so you've brought up a number of excellent points. I'm not going to remember most of these to follow through on, but I'm going to try. So at Inclusion Center, we do a lot of advocacy, and we've come up with a number of different ways of working with our community. So do you know about our Knock for Assistance?
Yes, I do. So the knock for assistance is if you're in a wheelchair or cannot open up a door, we have asked certain shops in downtown, actually I think we've asked all of them, but not all of them are choosing to do this. They have like a little sign in the window with a wheelchair that says knock for assistance. So if you can't get in the door by yourself, you can knock and someone will come and help you in to the building if there is that sign that says knock for assistance.
Right, because wheelchair accessibility isn't just about having a ramp, it's also about opening the door or being able to get through the door. And so.
And in the aisles of the store.
Right.
That too.
That's right. And so we talk to people in the community about all this stuff. And then we've also worked with the Summers Farmers Market, the Winter Farmers Market, the Co-op, Hannaford's, all these different places.
Gallery walk.
About, that's right,
Yeah.
about disability-related issues. Basically, when people come here, we learn what the issues are, and we see who's interested in doing what, and then we try and come up with clever ways of dealing with the issues. So we've made a number of videos about specific disabilities and about accessibility in town and in the sidewalks. What other advocacy things?
Well, we had the town of Brattleboro look at, like community things like gallery walk, or anytime there's a gathering of citizens in the town, that they pass something so that it will always be handicap accessible, which is something they never had before. That was done like a year and a half or 2 years ago. Through our efforts, we made that change so that people who come in afterwards can expect that when they go to an event in the town of Brattleboro, that they'll have access to it for a number of different kinds of disabilities. People always think of people in wheelchairs or people who are mobility challenged, but there are other issues that people have besides those. Some people have PTSD and they're like completely traumatized by certain situations, and we like to take that into consideration and what ways we can make things accessible to them with those types of disabilities. There are many invisible disabilities out there, and one of the things that I hear all the time when I start talking about stuff that I'm doing or want to do, people will say, "You're not disabled, you don't look like you're disabled," or whatever, but they don't really have any idea what my issue is and what kinds of struggles that I have. Although I seem to be fully functioning, there are many things that I'm incapable of doing due to my stroke. And that's true of a lot of people, even people who have mobility issues or whatever. Sometimes they have hidden disabilities in addition to that. You think about the trauma of people not being able to be mobile or to get around or whatever, and what that does to their psyche and how that further disables them. So I think part of our mission here at Inclusion Center is not only figuring out practical solutions for people to help them with those practical issues, but also to help people have the confidence to fight for the things that they need and to recognize how they can be helped in some other way.
I do know that for Inclusion Center, it for a lot of people who come here, it's not just fun and games. For a lot of people who come, it's more like a second family.
It's like a lifeline to them.
Yeah, and a lifeline, yeah. I mean, for me personally, I might seem like I'm highly functioning, but like if I go to, even if it's a family gathering of just my family, I can handle maybe an hour and a half of socializing and things like that before my brain is ready to shut down and be focused on a book, a game, or or a video game, or a movie, or something else besides chit-chatting and socializing with everyone. Because my brain can't handle a certain amount of, it can only handle a certain amount of socializing and stimulation. So that's part of the reason why I like movies and things like that so much, is because they're a way for me to shut down, have my brain shut down, just relax and be pretty much happy.
It's interesting that you mentioned about having a sensitivity to an odor in your apartment, because recently we've had a number of people come to us who have multiple chemical sensitivity, and this is an issue that I think is sort of exploding now, because there's a lot of people who are recognizing that that's a real disability. And of course, people coming in to us talk to us and tell us how when they went to the doctor or whatever, the doctor basically laughed at them and said, "That's no such thing, that doesn't exist." But for them, it's totally real and totally debilitating. So this is like one of the things that we're now recognizing and doing what we can to make things more comfortable for those people and allow them to have access to a normal life, whatever that means. So there's a lot of disabilities that people are just beginning to address and beginning to be able to do something about, helping people to move on with their life and not feel like they're prisoners because they have a disability.
Well, with that in mind, we just learned about this, and we're just, the beginning stages of understanding it and all. And we realized that we can include people who can't come to Inclusion Center through Skype or FaceTime. And so we actually even have a new board member because of that. She can't leave her home, but she can participate with us to a great extent through technology, which is very cool. And that says a lot about how we function. Like, we learn what the issue is, and then we all put our heads together and figure out how to include that person and how to make it work.
And they make a great contribution to the Inclusion Center, even if they can't be here physically. And I think it helps people not to be so isolated, even if they do have to be on Skype to be part of a meeting or something, just like we did this morning. We found out that this person had a great idea for something we haven't done yet, and they're going to start working on that, so they're included here at the Inclusion Center, but they're also making a difference in the greater community with their idea, so it works for everybody.
Yeah, I know, like, when we play games, most of the games that I have, or that I come up with, not all of them, but some of them, I have to accommodate and try and figure out how to get it so, for example, someone in a wheelchair could play. Someone who has hard time functioning with their hands could play. So, like, an example of one, when we did like freeze dancing or something like that, someone in a motor power wheelchair or even a regular wheelchair doesn't have to necessarily dance with their full body. They can just dance with their upper body or move their wheelchair around as they're dancing and stuff like that. It's tricky sometimes to figure out how to make it work for everybody, but a lot of times we just bypass the rules and make it our own rules of how to do things while we're playing the game.
Yeah, basically, we're all about breaking rules and creating our own idea for how to make people's lives better.
Yeah, it's like we're breaking down a whole bunch of barriers. It's kind of like Disability Awareness Day, up in Burlington. It's kind of like that here, but it's like we have more fun doing it while making sure people are aware of what we need too.
So on Mondays, right now we do a lot of art. And yeah, the art is the same way. I mean, everything that we do here, we adapt. So right now we're doing paper mache, and we come up with ideas, and we try it out, and we see if it works, and we see who can do what. And some people don't want to get their hands, in the
Paper mache.
gook.
Yeah.
So because tactily that doesn't feel good, and so on. So they do the painting, on Mondays, we also, every day that we get together, we have conversations about whatever is important going on in our lives.
Or going on in the world that we just feel is important.
Somehow affects us.
Yeah.
And then on Fridays, we do all sorts of things. We're always happy when Alana here brings in a game that we can play, because it's so fun and silly. And then we have the presentations. But also, I just want to be really clear that I feel like we sound so serious and so intellectual and all that. We are as silly as people can get, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, like just now when you guys were trying to do that dance to that darn song, oh my God, I can't even imagine. There's like these movements that I can't even don't even want to try, because it just looks so bizarre that it just makes me laugh seeing other people do it, let alone hearing the song that goes along with it.
And most of us are old too, so we're willing to do things that we shouldn't even be doing. Our bodies are saying no, but our heads are saying this is fun, we'll do it anyway.
Yeah.
To me, the Inclusion Center is a highlight of my life. I look forward to it every Friday. I know I'm going to learn things, and it is fun. I laugh.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah, we all laugh.
I mean,
We all have a good time.
And it's not like, it's not like someone tells a joke and only one person laughs. It's not like that. It's like everyone is laughing because we're doing something so hilarious or so much fun that we can't help but to laugh. I mean, we were doing what was it, like a trivia thing? I was looking up trivia stuff on the computer, and people were trying to answer, and I think it was all to do with states, and everyone was just laughing because it was hilarious. I mean, people were
Right.
getting the wrong answers, but it was still hilarious. So we're laughing as I'm trying to tell the correct answers.
Right.
It was kind of hard to tell the correct answers because we're laughing so hard.
Right. So is there anything else that we should say about Inclusion Center for people who don't know anything about us?
Well,
Come and
we
join
are,
us.
yeah, you should come and join us, but we're also a nonprofit. So all our profits come from either by donation or occasionally, not always, but the Buddy Walk has been the past couple of years, but not anymore.
No, no.
Yeah. So all our money comes from outside donators, and people donate not just money, but they also donate supplies, things to do, snacks. So it's just if you come, you don't have to donate anything. It just think something to keep in mind that, you know, we're not going to be able to be here forever if we don't have any income to pay for the spaces that we rent and stuff like that.
And we are free for everyone.
Yes.
And everyone, absolutely everyone is welcome.
Yes,
Even if you don't have a disability,
exactly.
you're welcome to come and see what we're about.
Yeah.
So hello again. We have a few more people here from Inclusion Center to talk about Inclusion Center. So would anybody, Jeannie, would you like to say a few words?
Yes. The first thing I thought of when I started here, first of all, I was not aware that there was any club or whatever like inclusion for kids. I've worked in this field forever, but I just never heard of inclusion. One big thing I noticed is that there is no judging. No one looks at anybody any different than who they are. And to me, that's really important.
And Jess, would you like to say, why do you come to Inclusion Center?
I feel accepted, and there's people all abilities like me, and I made some good friends here, and they play a lot of games that I like, and there's people that come to do presentations, and
Ruben, would you like to say anything? Do you like coming to Inclusion Center? Okay, good answer. Danny, you come to Inclusion Center. Yeah. What do you like doing when you come here? Yeah, it's good. Do you like doing art?
Yep.
Yeah. Do you dance with us?
Yep.
Yeah. And you have a good time here?
Yep.
Good. Good.
Yep.
So at Inclusion Center, we have people of all abilities, as you have heard, and we also have people from the community come in. And Ellen is here with us today. Ellen, how did you when did you come the first time? How did you hear about us?
So I think I came the first time in maybe 2016, and I actually heard about it from Sheila Linton. And Sheila and I were working together on like the thing called the People's Convention that happened up in Montpelier. We were just going around and talking to different groups in the community that were involved with a bunch of different issues. Disability rights was one of them, and I really got connected to the Inclusion Center through Sheila. And then I've been back occasionally for some dancing, for a birthday celebration, for some of the presentations, and sort of connecting with the Inclusion Center, especially around disability rights and healthcare rights.
And Jess, I was thinking one of your favorite things to do, as far as I know, here at Inclusion Center has to do with your nails. You want to tell people about that?
yeah, there's a friend that I made that does my nails for me.
So somebody comes in, at this point, she's coming in once a month to do makeovers with makeup, and then she also does nails, and people just love that. So is there anything else that anybody would like to say to introduce the community to Inclusion Center?
Well, the Inclusion Center is going to be having a window display at the Brattleboro Chamber of Commerce in, when's the date again?
June 6th,
We
maybe?
could, the whole week of June 6th,
Yes.
right? And so it'll be like a window display, you're obviously more than welcome to walk by and look at it. Maybe there'll be some teasers on Facebook at some point, but we're not entirely sure if they will be or not, so just keep that in mind.
Actually, what we're doing, we thought about this display a lot, so we all talked about how to put it together, what we wanted to get across, and then we also talked about how to be truly inclusive. So we are going to have an audio version of the display so that people who are visually impaired can, let's see, visually impaired, so you hear a description of the display. Right.
Yeah.
And that's going to be on YouTube. Is there anything else, Jeannie?
It's back to judging. You know, all of us have little quirks, and we have to get up and walk around, or we need to go outside to calm down. Any of these little quirks are very welcome here.
Yeah, we have this large space, and we also have a space back there if you need to be away, if it's too much stimulation. And also, we have activities, but if you're not interested in being in the activity, or if it's too stimulating, you can sit at a table, put your headset on, or do a puzzle or whatever. You don't have to participate. Whatever works for you, works for all of us here. So I guess that's it from Inclusion Center. So thank you very much for listening
And watching.
and watching. Bye.
Bye.
So I'm Ellen Schwartz, and I'm the president of the Vermont Workers Center. And I would like to talk a little bit about Disability Awareness Day, which I went to up at the State House. It's an annual day, and I've been going probably for the last 4 or 5 years. It happens every year in February, and it's sponsored by the Vermont Coalition on Disability Rights and a number of other disability rights organizations like Vermont Center for Independent Living and Green Mountain Self Advocates, who are all part of that coalition. So I'm a person who currently doesn't have a disability, but I feel it's important to go up. The reason I go up every year is because I really believe that that the rights of people with disabilities are human rights, that we're all in this boat together, not only because any of us could develop a disability at any point, but also because we're all human beings, and we really all deserve to be able to live independent lives, and we deserve to be able to live lives with dignity. So I was there really a lot to learn and to listen, and actually the issue of dignity is something that came up a lot as I was listening to people with disabilities who were talking about what they wanted out of life, and so many of the different things that people were talking about. The theme this year was healthcare, but no matter what people were talking about, the issue of basically being able to live a dignified life was one of the common themes that I heard from a lot of the people who I heard speak. It's held at the State House so that people can talk to their legislators, and I was able to have lunch with my legislator, Molly Burke, and with some folks from this community, folks with disabilities, who were talking with Molly about some of the proposed budget cuts and what that would mean for their lives if those cuts went through. The budget cuts are something that I personally have been watching, keeping an eye on, and also the Vermont Workers Center that has a campaign for the human right to health care. We've been keeping an eye on that and putting out the word when calls need to be made about these cuts. Some of the really severe cuts to services for people with disabilities that were proposed were cuts to the developmental services budget, which is a budget that has been cut every year. So it's right now already insufficient, and they wanted to cut that further. They wanted to also cut the attendant services program, which is a program that provides in-home help to people with severe disabilities who might need help with things like cooking or cleaning or just sort of the activities of daily living. And essentially what that program does is enable people to live in their own homes rather than being in a nursing home or a rehab facility. So right now the budget still hasn't passed, but those have been reinstated in the budget. I think not quite at the full level, but we're keeping an eye on that. We're just letting people know if more calls need to be made about that. That was actually one of the things. I went to a workshop on the budget led by a woman named Susan Aronoff, and it was very informative, and that was one of the things that she was talking to people about, and one of the things that people with disabilities were advocating for. We're talking about, like, what would it mean in my life if I were, for example, one person who I heard speak was talking about how his personal care helper, assistant, drives him to work, and being able to work is so important to him in being able to feel like he's contributing to the community and to live an independent life. But without that ride to work, he would lose his job. So there were very basic things like that people were talking about. And then one of the things that I learned about when I was up there was that there was a bill passed to increase the wages of the direct service providers, because many of the people providing those services are earning very low wages. And one of the consequences of that is that there's a very high turnover, because people can't survive on those wages. So if they can get a better job, they do, which is totally makes sense. But what that means for the person with the disability is that they might be cycling through many different direct service providers, and each time having to make a relationship with a new person, adjust to a different person, and it creates a lot of turmoil in the lives of the people who are receiving the services. It's also very expensive because all these new people have to be trained. And so one of the things I hadn't known about was that there is a push to institute part 2 of that law to bring those wages up just a little higher, still probably not what you'd call a livable wage. I was excited about the day. It was really great to see so many people advocating on their own behalf. And the campaign I'm involved with for healthcare as a human right, from day one, we've always considered disability services, long-term care, home care to be part of healthcare. It's not just about health insurance, it's about all the care that all of us need to live dignified lives. So another thing that I wanted to bring up was the issue of Medicaid. And the reason I want to bring that up now is that, well, first of all, folks may not know, but over a third of Vermont residents are on Medicaid in one form or another. Some people are children, so they're on Dr. Dinosaur. There are people who are on adult Medicaid because they qualify by income. And there also are people with disabilities who may get Medicare, but Medicare doesn't cover 100% of the costs. And so for a supplement, if they qualify for Medicaid, they have Medicaid as a supplement. And in addition, if you're a person with a disability, you may have something called a Medicaid waiver, which enables you to get assistance with things like independent housing as a Medicaid recipient. So there are a lot of different ways in which people either qualify for Medicaid or qualify for Medicaid covered services, including things like Medicaid rides, which is really important in our community because we don't have a really robust public transportation system, and a lot of folks who either can't afford a car or can't drive for one reason or another need to get to medical appointments. And that's what Medicaid rides provide. It's a way to get to those appointments when you need to. So Medicaid has been something that so it's a funny program because it's a federal program, but it's run through the state. It's administered through the state. And on the federal level right now, there's a real push among some Congress people to basically do away with Medicaid, little by sort of bleeding it dry. But the ultimate goal is to do away with Medicaid because it's a program that serves poor people, and there's a lot of hatred for poor people right now, and like, you know, this feeling that poor people are just like taking advantage of the system. Obviously, I don't agree with that. Obviously, the Healthcare is a Human Right campaign doesn't agree with that because we believe that all people deserve health care. That's why it's a human right. So last summer, when Medicaid was being threatened, there were the disability rights community organized a lot of caravans to Washington. There were people who sat in the House and Senate office buildings, including people from Vermont, some folks with disabilities, some nurses went down in support of Medicaid. There were people who got arrested for sitting in there. Again, many people with disabilities and supporters, including nurses, and there were caravans from Vermont that were a part of that. The organization I'm a part of, the Vermont Workers Center, is planning a Medicaid March for June 16th. It's going to be up in St. Johnsbury. And the reason we're having it in St. Johnsbury, which is in the Northeast Kingdom, is that is the part of Vermont that has the highest percentage of people on Medicaid. So it's really trying to draw attention to the fact of how many people in Vermont rely on Medicaid in order to get basic medical services, medical needs met, and what a disaster it would be if Medicaid were to be cut back. In fact, we think it should be expanded. I talk to a lot of people about healthcare, and one of the issues that people on Medicaid often bring up to me is adult dental, that it's really hard or impossible to get. Child dental is different under Dr. Dinosaur. They can often get something for their kids, but they're not able to get dental care for themselves, or if they can, they have to travel a long distance to find a provider that takes takes Medicaid. They have a cap, which means that if they need something like a root canal, they're more likely to just get the tooth pulled because the root canal is too expensive, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just one example of a way in which Medicaid could be expanded, but it certainly should not be cut back. And the reason I wanted to bring that up, it's an issue that affects people with disabilities, but it affects it's not only affecting people with disabilities, and none of us are just one thing. Like a person with disabilities is not only a person with disabilities, or a person on Medicaid isn't only a person on Medicaid. So fighting to preserve and expand Medicaid is until we have universal health care where we're all in the same system, which is the ultimate goal of our campaign. Fighting to preserve things like Medicaid and to expand things like Medicaid are really important for people with disabilities and for everybody else who's either on Medicaid or knows somebody. I bet probably every listener to this program or viewer of this program probably knows somebody on Medicaid in one form of Medicaid or another, because so many people in Vermont and around the country actually rely on Medicaid to get medical care.